Hello, English 102 online students. Professor Berninger here. I don't know why I always introduce myself like who else is making a video and sending it to you. But anyway, good to see all of you on this Sunday. Got my run in. It was a really good run. 6 miles, 7-minute 56 per mile. That was pretty good. Fastest run in a while. And I hope you're doing well out there. I like staying connected with you. You know, feel free to drop me an email anytime about how class is going for you. I want to hear what you might want more of, less of, how you feel your learning's going. You know, keep connected. Otherwise, I'm going to assume everything's great. So hey, you know, that's my assumption at the time. And I think you guys are doing great, especially on the discussion boards. The last round of discussion boards here with John Updike's A&P. By the way, A&P, it was the old Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company that became a supermarket chain. So, you know, think Price Chopper, Hannaford, that kind of supermarket. A&Ps are gone, but it's the same thing. That's why today I came up to the site of the old Grand Union. It's now Ocean State Job Lot. But this is where the supermarket was I went to long ago when it was the Grand Union. So I thought it'd be nice to have a backdrop of an old supermarket to talk about A&P. But anyway, good job on the discussion boards. I pushed you to disagree with each other, and you did very respectfully. I very much appreciate that. It's good for you, right? It's important. It's very important in life to learn how to disagree with people respectfully. At Columbia Green, all the professors, everybody gets along very well. So sometimes in meetings, somebody will say something and, you know, it's kind of stupid. And nobody will disagree because we're too polite and maybe we don't really trust ourselves to disagree respectfully, but that's bad, right? You should be able to disagree with someone respectfully. And it's very important to learn how to do that. It's a good skill, right? It's a good skill. And you also have to learn how to accept being disagreed with respectfully. So there's a big difference between disagreeing and being disagreeable, right? Disagreeable is bad, but disagreeing respectfully is very good. Otherwise, I'm trying to keep the discussion boards interesting rather than just tell you to write a response, right? This time I tried to get you to disagree with each other. I got you to be ridiculous with William Carlos Williams. So if you have future ideas to keep the discussion boards lively and interesting, you let me know about that as well. So John Updike's classic short story, A&P, set in a supermarket. Our main character is the 19-year-old Sammy, and the manager is Lendl, and his co-worker is Stokesy. And there's these 3 young women in bathing suits who come into the store. So some other things I want to bring up before I get to your discussion board, the core of your discussion board writings. Something else running through this story that I didn't quite pick up, I don't think I saw it anywhere in the discussion boards, is there's a real issue of difference in class in this story. Social and economic class. The 3 young women are clearly from a higher class. Sammy talks about how the town he's in, even though it's not far from the ocean, like 5 miles, I think, so we're a little north of Boston here. A lot of people in town haven't been to the beach in 20 years. They don't get out of town much. However, these young women, they're buying, oh, it was kind of gross. What was it, sardines and sour cream? And he could picture at their beach house people eating it with toothpicks, and the men dressed in you know, bow ties and striped jackets, and the women in dresses, and it was sort of a high class thing. So what's being presented here is that these 3 young women are of a higher social and economic class than most of the people who are shopping at the A&P, who Sammy has very little respect for, especially the women, right? We'll get around to how he talks about women before our time is up here. So it's interesting to think, and I want you to think about this. How do you respond to people who are of a different social or economic class? I guess I'm middle class, so I'm around my fellow middle class people. My other job, town historian of Ghent, and other things I do brings me around people who are very wealthy, and they're a little different, right? And I'm interested to see how I feel around them, how different it is. Am I judging? Am I feeling judged? And what, you know, am I comfortable? Am I less comfortable? And sometimes I'm around people who are of a lower, and I hate these words higher and lower. Nobody is better than anybody else, okay? So I hate this high and low thing, but it's kind of the language we're stuck with. And I'm around people who are not middle class, who are below, but not any worse, no better or worse. And that's interesting also. So we tend to be the most comfortable around people from our own social and economic class, although I encourage you to marry someone really rich. So his response to these young women is very interesting, and he thinks about what they think of the people in the store. And he assumes that they're looking down on the people in the store, although we have no hint that they are. These three young women, we don't really get any indication that they're snobs. I mean, yeah, they walk in their bathing suits, they flout the rules, but they don't say anything terribly snobby. They just kind of say, hey, we're just buying this, okay, we're leaving, right? But he assumes that they're snobby. So think about that, how you react and feel around people of a different social and economic class. Sammy, I think, is a little bit starstruck, not only because he's very smitten with Queenie, right? He even refers to her as Queenie like she's royalty. He's quite smitten with her body. He objectifies them. Let's face it, this is a typical 19-year-old guy, okay? If you think he's a disgusting pervert, then guess what? All 19-year-old guys are disgusting perverts. He doesn't say anything terrible to them. We're inside his head, okay? I used to be a 19-year-old guy. This is how they think. No offense to 19-year-old guys, okay? So it is interesting how he thinks that the women are thinking about him. But anyway, he's quite taken with them, and for whatever reason, the one is he's very attracted to, and I think he's a bit intimidated by their social and economic status. But otherwise, there's really nothing impressive about them. They're really quite ordinary, frankly. The way they're presented. It's just the way he thinks about them. So that's one theme. That's one theme in the story. Another theme is sort of this rebellious teen thing going on here, right? He's 19 years old, and you know, we've all been there ourselves, and we're not going to become a part of the system. And you're sort of coming out of your teen years where maybe you really rebelled against the system, and adults didn't know anything, but now you think you're an adult when you're 19 and you know better than everybody else. And he's fighting the man. He's fighting the system. He's not going to become a corporate tool of A&P. So that's going along here as well. And he's also looking around, and he's not liking what he sees, right? He refers to the other customers as sheep. Now, when someone is called a sheep, it's not complimentary, okay? Sheep implies you are mindless. You are a mindless sheep following the flock. I don't know if you've ever seen a flock of sheep, but if one takes off, they all follow, right? And that's why they're pretty easy, fairly easy for dogs and shepherds to herd, because they all move together. They don't think on their own. Sheep are not individuals. In fact, a sheep all by itself is a sad sheep. Okay, so that's important. He also looks around and describes some of the other customers as swine in chutes, right? And if you're a swine in a chute, you're probably going to slaughter. So again, not very complimentary, the way he talks about the people in the store. And this is what he doesn't want to become. And of course, the cashier next to him is Stokesy, who's only 3 years older, right? He's 22, only 3 years older, and he has 2 kids already, and he's looking to be an A&P lifer. He's looking to become a manager someday. And Sammy's like, yeah, maybe in the 1990s, and of course this story's set in the 60s, so maybe after 30 years, he'll be the manager, right? The man giving out the orders. By the way, quick side note, I have nothing against shopping store cashiers, supermarkets. You got to get your food. I think providing food in a nice system, keeping it fresh, is essential to our lives. It's where I have nothing against anybody who works in a store, especially a store that sells food so we can eat. So just a disclaimer there. And I don't think John Updike is either. However, we have this rebellious kid who's sort of looking around him and saying, I don't want to be a part of all of this. So I have nothing against anybody in this story at all, or people in real life who work at a supermarket. All right. So we're working our way down. The core of what you wrote about in your discussion boards was about, and I've made you talk about this, do you think it was a good idea that Sammy quit or didn't quit? And all of you presented the perfect argument on either side. So we'll go with it was really good that he quit. Okay, he quits for 2 reasons, and some of you got to this in the discussion board, some didn't. Sammy quits, there are 2 reasons he quits. One not so good and one good reason. The not so good reason, he wants to impress these rich, scantily clad rich girls. And he hopes that they heard him say it. So, you know, if he's so cool and he's not gonna follow policy, well, guess what? 19-year-old boy trying to impress wealthy young women in bathing suits, that's pretty standard, buddy. That's just about what any 19-year-old guy is gonna do. So you're a little bit of a sheep if you think that's, you know, somehow a cool thing to do. However, so I don't respect it. I understand it, but I don't respect him a whole lot for trying to impress these young women. But I understand it. His other reason, though, is probably a much better one. He does not want to become a corporate tool, you know, just applying somebody else's policy, not having his own thoughts. A tool is someone, it's not just a stupid person. A tool is someone who is in someone else's hand. They don't think for themselves, they're just a tool of someone else. And he sees Stokesy, who he likes, you know, he and Stokesy are, you know, talking dirty a little bit about these young women. But he sees Stokesy as his life's pretty much like over. He's 22, 2 kids, and he wants to work at A&P the rest of his life. He doesn't think much of that. All the people in the store, swine and sheep. And of course, the manager, Lendl, you know, he doesn't think much of him either, even though Lendl's quite nice to Sammy, right? When Sammy quits, Lendl says, you don't want to do this, Sammy. He doesn't blow up at him. Well, get the bleep out of here, you punk. No, he doesn't do that. He doesn't say, fine. You know, he's like, Sammy, you know, you don't want to do this. You know, think of your family. You know, just, you know, but then he can't, you know, he can't stop him. He's not going to wrestle him to the ground. So Lendl, I think, you know, handles the situation as well as he can. However, clearly he represents a corporate tool. The young women were already in line. You know, just let them finish up and get out of the store. By intervening, he probably kept them in the store in their bathing suits longer than they would have been. So anyway, but you know, you never know. Somebody from corporate headquarters might be there watching, so I guess you have to apply the rules. So when Sammy quits to impress the young women, come on, dude. You know, that's pretty standard fare. If you're going to be a rebel, why are you acting like any 19-year-old guy? However, him saying, making this decision at 19, I am not going with the flow. I am going to cut my own path. I'm going to march to the beat of my own drummer. That's good, right? That is to be admired, right? I think we can all admire that on some level. And the last line of the story about, and I don't have the story with me, I couldn't find it. That last line of the story, which will appear on the next essay exam, about his life was going to be much harder now. Well, his life's going to be harder because, hey, if you just apply the policy that somebody hands you, like Lendl or Stokesy, you just go with the flow and you become a mindless sheep, life is easy. You don't even have to think, do you? You just be Mr. or Mrs. Mainstream, do what everybody else is doing, be a mindless sheep following the flock. That's easy. But if you're going to be a rebel, if you're going to be pointing out, hey, that's wrong, if you're going to stick your finger in somebody's eye who's doing something you don't think much of, if you're going to be a fighter for justice and truth, that's hard, right? It's a lot easier to go with the flow in life. It's a lot harder to speak up. It's a lot harder to say, you know what, I'm turning in this bow tie and this apron, I'm out of here. That's a harder path to cut. So at the end, when Sammy quits and Updike says life was going to be a lot harder for him, it's because he's going to be cutting his own path. He's rejecting the easy route of working in a store, maybe moving up the managerial chain, just going with the flow till he dies, right? He is going to be rebelling. He's going to not be a sheep or a swine or a Lendl or a Stokesy. He's going to be a true individual, and that's hard. That is much harder. So those are all the things to include on your essay exam question. My view of Sammy at the end here, which does not have to be your view. All of your views were well-reasoned and very good. Even though you disagreed with each other, you were all correct, right? This is not math class with one easy answer. Even though you respectfully disagreed with each other, you were all correct. But I'll lay Professor Berninger's view down for you, in case you find yourself in Sammy's position. I think Sammy should not have quit. He could have continued to work there, but still not become a sheep. His eyes have been opened, okay? So here's how the story unfolds. He sees Lendl scolding these women. Sammy's kind of embarrassed, get over it. And he's like, man, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be Stokesy. Okay, good. Awareness, self-revelation, knowledge. But become wiser with that and become critical of everything you see in the store, but don't quit. Continue to work there and learn how not to become Lendl. Learn how not to become Stokesy, right? Learn from them how not to become them. Learn from the people in the store who you think are swine and sheep, classic, 19-year-old view, not to become that. So I don't think he should have quit. I think he should have stayed there. I think it's his own best interest to stay there, make a little money, and be critical of the place, right? Be critical of the place. A really good book came out 20 years ago by Barbara Ehrenreich, and she went and worked at Walmart. She went and cleaned houses. She's a pretty wealthy author, and she went and did all these jobs, and then she wrote about them. The book's called Nickeled and Dimed, and how hard it is to make a living working at those level of jobs. So she went in and she critiqued it and she exposed it. I don't know if it changed anything, but so that's what Sammy could do. Sammy could stay there and learn, right? Learn the system that he has grown to hate, and maybe irritate and change from within the system, or at least learn the system while you go to college. And then when you get out, then bust the system, right? Find a way to be disruptive to it. So I think Sammy should have stayed and used this experience and continued to learn about what he did not want to be. So there's Professor Berninger's view, also correct, just like all of yours were, even though some of you would disagree with me. But keep up the good work out there. Don't do things to impress young women in bathing suits. Do them to impress yourself, right? Thank you. Do them because you want to grow wiser, because it's what you feel you should be doing, not what the manager or your parents necessarily think. But do look for motivation from inside. Look for that feeling inside that here I am doing the right thing. But don't be impulsive like quitting your job. A quick side note, women in the story are referred to, I don't know if this is 19-year-old boy or Updike, but witches, sheep, swine, and also one of them is and the house slaves, right? That's offensive to institution of slavery as a metaphor. It was horrible. House slaves are just domestic women, housewives who just slave away in the house all day. So he has this sort of superior attitude, but he's a kid, that's okay. But women, and then he of course objectifies and critiques the bodies of these young women who come in the store. So typical 19-year-old guy, but really not appropriate, and I should point that out as a feminist critique of the story, that you just need to be aware that that's really not how we should be thinking about women. It's all fairly denigrating, and don't let that subliminal message in the story get into your head. So keep up the good work out there, people, and I will see you around on the internet.